It's just a bad ceremony. Me going won't bring him back from the dead. That was what my daughter said to me the morning of my husband's funeral. She said it with no shame, no tears, and no ounce of respect. She didn't even flinch when my eyes widened, when the air in my chest nearly left me. The bitterness in her words cut me deeper than the death I was mourning. But that was not the end. Because 3 weeks later, after she skipped her father's funeral and went about her life like nothing happened, she came back. Not alone this time. She came back with her husband, her greedy husband, and together they stood in front of my door, not to comfort me, not to check on how I was coping, but because they had heard about the fortune my husband left behind. They wanted their share. My daughter's eyes were sharp, her voice bold, as if she was owed something. Her husband stood behind her with his wide grin, like a wolf that had smelled blood. My heart burned inside me that day, but instead of giving them what they wanted, I came up with a better idea. A dangerous idea. One that would change everything. And that is where my story begins. But before I go deeper, let me introduce myself. My name is Margaret. I'm 74 years old and I live in Alabama, here in the United States. Life has taken me through storms, deserts, and deep valleys, but it has also taught me how to fight with my head and not just my hands. This story I'm about to tell you is real, and it carries lessons I want you to hold close. Before we go further, please subscribe, like this story, and click that notification button so you won't miss the rest of the chapters as they come. And tell me, from which part of the country are you watching this from? Let's build this story together. Now let me take you back to the beginning. It was a Tuesday morning when everything went dark for me. My husband, Richard, had been sick for months. Cancer had eaten away at his once strong body, leaving him a shadow of himself. I watched him fade day by day, and though the doctors gave us hope sometimes, I knew the end was near. That morning, I was sitting beside him, holding his hand. His breathing was heavy, shallow. He looked at me with eyes that were weak, but still filled with love. He squeezed my fingers and whispered, "Maggie, don't let them take what I worked for." "Who, Richard?" I asked, though deep down I already knew. He coughed, struggled to speak, then finally said, "She will come with him. Be strong." Minutes later, he was gone. Just like that, the man who had built a life with me for over 50 years was no more. My tears fell without control. The silence in the room was too loud, too cruel. The days that followed were heavy. I informed everyone, called the family, made arrangements. My daughter, Linda, received the news, but her voice over the phone was cold. "No, Mom, how are you holding up?" "No, I'll be there soon." Just silence, followed by, "All right, I'll let you know." When the funeral day came, the seats reserved for her and her husband were empty. People whispered around me, asking where she was. I gave no answer, because the truth was too painful. Later, I found out she had gone shopping that day. Shopping? While we lowered her father into the ground. That was when I began to question where I went wrong as a mother. For weeks, I stayed in the house alone. Friends visited, neighbors brought food, the church ladies prayed with me. But when the last car left, and the last prayer ended, I was alone again. My nights were long. My mornings were heavy. I thought that was the worst pain I could feel. But I was wrong. Because 3 weeks later, there was a knock on my door. I opened it and there she was. Linda. My daughter. My blood. But she wasn't smiling. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even ashamed. Her husband, David, stood behind her, tall and sly, with that disgusting smirk on his face. "Mom," she began, folding her arms like she was in charge. "We heard Dad left something behind. We came to talk about how to divide it." I froze. My legs nearly gave way. This was the same child who said going to her father's funeral wouldn't bring him back. The same child who abandoned me when I needed her the most. And now she was standing in front of me, not to love me, but to demand what wasn't hers. David stepped forward. "We know about the inheritance," he said, his voice smooth like poison. "It's only fair we get our share." At that moment, my husband's last words rang in my head. "Don't let them take what I worked for." I straightened my back, wiped my tears, and told them to sit. But in my heart, a storm was already brewing. They thought I was weak, broken, and easy to fool. But I had a better idea. One that would teach them a lesson they would never forget. And that was the day everything changed. But before I tell you what I planned, I need you to understand who my daughter really is, and how we got here. Because a story doesn't just start at the end. It begins long before the storm breaks. Linda wasn't always like this. Once, she was a sweet little girl with curly hair and bright eyes. She loved to help me in the kitchen, and she adored her father. But as she grew, something in her shifted. She became restless, greedy for more than what we could give. By the time she met David, her heart had hardened. David was the kind of man every mother prays her daughter never marries. Handsome, yes. Charming, yes. But beneath that smile was a hunger for wealth, and he didn't care whose bones he had to step on to get it. When Linda brought him home for the first time, Richard warned her. He saw through him. But she didn't listen. Love, or what she thought was love, blinded her. Years passed and distance grew between us. Calls became fewer, visits stopped altogether. Until the day of the funeral, when she proved just how far she had drifted. And now here she was back in my house, demanding what wasn't hers. I looked at them that day, and instead of rage, a strange calm came over me. I knew right then that I would not cry, I would not beg, and I would not surrender. I would fight, not with fists or guns, but with wisdom. Because sometimes the best revenge is not in shouting, but in silence and planning. So I gave them tea, sat across from them, and listened as they spoke about dividing money they didn't even know existed. And then when the moment was right, I smiled. A smile they didn't understand. Because in my mind, the plan had already begun. What I did next shocked even me. But it was the beginning of everything that followed. And it all started with a phone call I made right after they left. The moment the door shut behind Linda and David, I stood frozen, the sound of their greedy voices still ringing in my ears. My hands trembled not from fear, but from anger boiling deep inside me. Then I walked slowly to the phone on the table. I dialed a number I hadn't used in years. My fingers shook as I pressed each button, but I didn't stop. When the line connected, a rough, familiar voice answered. "Margaret." "Yes, it's me," I whispered, glancing around as though Linda and David might be listening from the shadows. "Well, well," the voice chuckled. "Didn't think I'd hear from you again. What's wrong?" "I need your help," I said firmly. "But this stays between us. My daughter and her husband, they've come sniffing around about Richard's fortune." There was silence on the other end. Then, I figured something like that would happen. "He warned me before he passed." That stopped me cold. "He told you too?" "Yes," the man said, his tone heavy. "But you need to be smart. You can't just hand anything over. Tell me where you kept it." My breath caught in my chest. He wanted to know where the inheritance was hidden. But even though I trusted him once after all these years, could I still trust him? Before I could answer, there was a loud crash outside my window. I jumped, dropping the phone. My heart hammered as I peered through the curtains. David was there, standing by his car, staring at my house with narrowed eyes, as though he already suspected I was hiding something. I picked up the phone quickly and whispered, "I'll call you back," then hung up. My hands were clammy, my chest tight. Why was he still there? Hadn't they just left? I watched as he lit a cigarette, leaned against the hood of his car, and smirked in the direction of my window. It wasn't the smirk of a man who was leaving. It was the smirk of a man waiting. The hours crawled by, but he didn't move. He sat there in the dark like a hunter waiting for his prey. My stomach twisted. If he was that desperate, how far was he willing to go? By midnight, I could no longer sit still. I locked every door, checked every window, and finally went upstairs to grab the small wooden box Richard had left me before he died. The box he told me never to show anyone, not even Linda. I opened it carefully, my breath shallow. Inside were stacks of papers, some bank documents, a few keys, and a letter written in Richard's shaky handwriting. Before I could read the letter, the lights in my house suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed me. And in the silence, I heard footsteps inside my home. The silence was thick, broken only by the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps echoing across my living room floor. My heart pounded so loud I feared whoever was inside could hear it. The house was swallowed in darkness. The only light came from the faint moonshine peeking through the curtains. I clutched the wooden box to my chest and froze on the staircase, listening. The steps moved closer, cautious but steady. Someone was in my house. Linda. I whispered, though I already knew better. My daughter never had the patience to sneak around. This was David's doing. I stood still, every nerve in my body screaming. Richard's last words echoed in my ears. Be strong. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped. Silence again. The kind that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand. I strained my ears, trying to pick up the faintest movement. Nothing. Then creak. The floorboard just below the stairs groaned. He was coming up. Panic surged through me, but I forced myself to move. I tiptoed up the remaining steps, careful not to make a sound, and slipped into my bedroom. I locked the door quietly and pressed my back against it, clutching the box tighter. I heard him test the bottom step. Slow. Deliberate. The predator inching closer to his prey. My eyes darted around the room. I had no weapon, nothing but the heavy lamp on my nightstand. My fingers shook as I unplugged it and wrapped the cord around my wrist, ready to swing if I had to. Then came the sound I dreaded. The floorboard right outside my door creaked. He was there. I held my breath, staring at the door handle. It turned. Slowly, carefully. But the lock held. Mrs. Margaret. David's voice slithered through the wood. Open the door. We need to talk. Talk. In the middle of the night, after cutting my power and sneaking into my house like a thief? My blood boiled, but I stayed silent. He chuckled. You think you can keep it from me? I know Richard left you something. And I'm not leaving until I get it. His words pierced the silence. Then after a pause, he banged on the door hard. The sound rattled through my bones. I'll give you until tomorrow morning, he hissed. If you don't hand it over, I'll take it myself. His footsteps retreated slowly, deliberately. I ran to the window and peered out through the curtains. Sure enough, he walked back to his car, got in and turned on the engine. But he didn't drive away. He parked right across the street, headlights off, watching. I knew right then he wasn't bluffing. He would wait. He would break me down, little by little, until I surrendered. I sank onto the bed, tears stinging my eyes. I opened Richard's letter with shaking hands. My dearest Maggie, it began, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. What I left behind is more than money. It is a key to everything we built and kept safe. Don't trust Linda. Don't trust David. And don't trust anyone who comes asking. The fortune is not for them. It's for you and the grandchildren. Use it wisely. And remember, strength doesn't always come with force. Sometimes it comes with patience. Be wise, my love. Be wise. I pressed the letter to my chest. My tears finally spilled. Not just from grief but from the weight of what I now carried. Richard had trusted me with everything. And I couldn't fail him. Not now, not ever. But how could I fight a man like David, cunning and relentless, when even my own daughter had chosen his side? I wiped my face and steadied my breathing. The night dragged on. But I refused to sleep. I stayed awake, holding the lamp in one hand and the box in the other, staring out the window at the dark shape of David's car. By dawn, he was still there. My nerves were raw, but I refused to let him see me break. I went about my morning as if nothing had happened. I brewed coffee, watered the plants, and even stepped out onto the porch with a calmness I didn't feel. David rolled down his window. Ready to talk now? He called, his smile smug. I sipped my coffee and met his eyes. You'll get nothing from me, David. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. His smile faded. For the first time, I saw a flash of frustration in his eyes. He leaned back in his seat, clenched his jaw, and rolled the window up. But I knew this wasn't over. By afternoon, Linda showed up. She marched right up to my door, her voice sharp. Mom, what are you doing? David told me you're being difficult. Why are you making this so hard? I stared at her, the daughter I once rocked to sleep, now standing in front of me like a stranger. Why are you doing this, Linda? Is money really worth more than your father's memory? Worth more than me? She rolled her eyes. Dad's gone. What matters now is the future. And you can't keep it all to yourself. That's selfish. The word stabbed me deep. Selfish. After everything I had sacrificed for her. After every sleepless night, and every meal skipped so she could eat better. But I bit back my tears. Linda, I said softly. One day, you'll regret this path. But until then, I will not let you and David destroy what your father built. She scoffed, spun on her heel, and stormed back to the car. I stood there, trembling, but proud I hadn't caved. That night, the storm finally broke. Around midnight, I woke to the sound of glass shattering downstairs. My heart leapt into my throat. This time David wasn't waiting. He had broken in. The sound of shattering glass jolted me upright. My breath caught in my chest as I clutched the lamp by my bed. For a moment, I prayed it was just the wind, a branch against the window, but then I heard it. The unmistakable crunch of broken glass under heavy boots. He was inside. I crept toward the staircase, every step slow and careful. The wooden floor beneath me creaking softly. My heart thundered in my ears. I tightened my grip on the lamp, whispering Richard's name under my breath like a shield. From the darkness below, I heard his voice. Margaret. David's tone was mocking, sing-song, as though he were calling out to a child in a game of hide and seek. You can't hide from me forever. Just hand it over and no one gets hurt. No one gets hurt. The words chilled me to the bone. This was no longer about greed, it was about power. And men like David didn't care what lines they crossed once they felt entitled to something. I slipped back into my room, closed the door softly, and pushed the dresser against it with all my strength. My arms ached, but fear gave me power. I needed time. Downstairs, footsteps moved from room to room. Drawers opening, cupboards slamming. He was searching, tearing my home apart piece by piece. Then silence. I froze. A second later, the sound came, louder this time. Heavy steps pounding up the stairs. He was coming straight for me. I raised the lamp high, sweat dripping down my forehead. My knees shook, but I planted my feet firmly. If he got through that door, I would swing with every ounce of strength left in my body. Margaret! His fist slammed against the door, rattling the dresser. You think you can outsmart me? I'll find it, with or without you. The dresser slid an inch with each blow. My breath came in shallow gasps. The wood splintered under his kicks. And then silence again. I dared not move. I dared not even breathe. But before I could relax, a low crack echoed from the window behind me. I spun around just in time to see the glass shatter inward. David's face appeared in the moonlight, twisted with rage, as his hand reached through the broken pane. The sound of shattering glass ripped through the night like a gunshot. Shards scattered across the floor, glinting in the pale moonlight. My heart slammed against my ribs as David's hand forced its way through the broken window. His face appeared next, twisted in a mask of greed and fury. Found you, he hissed. I stumbled backward, clutching the lamp in both hands. My chest tightened, fear clawing at my throat, but I forced myself to stand firm. This was my home, my sanctuary, and I wouldn't let this wolf tear it apart. He grunted as he pulled himself through the window, boots crunching on glass. When his feet landed on the carpet, he stood tall, towering over me. His eyes darted straight to the wooden box in my arms. Give it to me, Margaret, he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. Now. I tightened my grip on the box. This doesn't belong to you. His jaw clenched. You don't know who you're messing with, old woman. You think you can keep me out? You think you can keep me waiting? He stepped closer, his shadow swallowing mine. Hand it over before I take it. I raised the lamp high, my hands trembling but ready. One more step, David, and I swear I'll split your skull open. For a second he laughed. A deep, cruel laugh that chilled my blood. But when he saw I wasn't lowering the lamp, his smirk faltered. You've got fight in you, he muttered. But you can't win. He lunged. I swung with all my strength. The lamp smashed against his shoulder, shattering on impact. Sparks flew as the bulb burst, plunging us back into darkness. He cursed loudly, stumbling back, but his hands grabbed at me in the dark. I kicked wildly, my foot catching his shin. He roared and shoved me hard. My back hit the wall, pain shooting through me. The box slipped from my arms, clattering onto the floor. No! I cried, diving for it, but David was quicker. He snatched it up, clutching it to his chest. His grin returned, wicked and triumphant. This is it, he said, panting. This is what he left you, isn't it? The treasure. The fortune. Don't you dare open it. I shouted, struggling to my feet. But he ignored me. With greedy hands he tore the box open. The smile on his face faltered. Inside, instead of gold or cash, he found only papers, bank documents, and Richard's letter. He flipped through them, confusion spreading across his face. What is this? Where's the money? I stood tall despite the ache in my body. Richard didn't leave you riches, David. He left me responsibility. He left me wisdom. Something you'll never understand. His face twisted with rage. He crumpled one of the papers and hurled it across the room. You're lying. You've hidden the real fortune somewhere else. Tell me where it is, or... He grabbed me by the collar, shoving me hard against the wall. My breath caught as his hand tightened around my neck. Tell me where it is, he snarled, spittle flying. Where is it? I clawed at his wrist, gasping for air, my vision blurring. But even as panic consumed me, Richard's words echoed in my mind. Strength doesn't always come with force. Sometimes it comes with patience. I forced myself to calm, even with his hand crushing me. With my remaining strength, I whispered, You'll never find it without me. His grip loosened slightly, curiosity flickering in his eyes. What do you mean? I coughed, dragging in air. The fortune, it's hidden. But only I know where. If you kill me, you'll never see a cent of it. He froze, torn between rage and greed. His eyes darted to the papers on the floor, then back to me. You're lying. I met his gaze steadily. Am I? Silence stretched between us. His chest heaved as he weighed his options. Finally, he shoved me away, breathing heavily. Fine. Then you're going to show me. I stumbled but stayed upright, my body shaking. I'll give you one day, he growled. One day to tell me where it is. If you don't. His eyes flicked to the broken glass on the carpet. He picked up a shard, held it up to the moonlight, and smiled coldly. I'll make sure you regret it. He shoved the box back into my arms, then climbed out the window the way he came, disappearing into the night. I collapsed onto the bed, clutching the box to my chest, my body trembling from head to toe. He wasn't done. He'd be back. And next time, he wouldn't just want papers, he'd want answers. I looked down at the letter in my lap. Richard's words swam in my blurred vision. Be wise, my love. Be wise. I wiped my tears, sat straighter, and whispered into the empty room. Then wise I shall be. But as I steadied myself, headlights flashed through the window. A car pulled up quietly outside. And this time it wasn't David's car. The hum of the engine outside sent a fresh wave of fear coursing through me. I crouched by the window, peering out through the torn curtain. The car wasn't David's. His old black sedan was long gone. This one was newer, sleeker, silver with tinted windows. My pulse quickened. Who else would come creeping up to my house in the middle of the night? The headlights cut off. Silence. I waited, breath shallow, until the driver's door opened. A tall figure stepped out, moving with the quiet assurance of someone who knew how to avoid being noticed. My stomach twisted. The man walked up the driveway, his coat swaying in the night breeze. Then he paused by the broken window, crouching to inspect the shattered glass glinting on the grass. He straightened, scanning the house slowly, like a hawk surveying prey. Every instinct screamed at me to hide. But something inside whispered, this isn't David. The man knocked on the front door. Not loud. Just 3 steady taps. I froze. Should I answer? My body trembled as I crept down the stairs, avoiding the shards of glass on the landing. At the door, I pressed my ear against the wood. Margaret, a low voice said. Familiar. Calm. It's me. My heart skipped. That voice. I knew that voice. I unlatched the chain slowly and cracked the door open just enough to see his face in the porch light. My breath caught. Samuel. I whispered. The man nodded. His hair was grayer now, lines deeper on his face, but those eyes, I'd know them anywhere. Samuel, Richard's younger brother. A man I hadn't seen in almost 20 years. Let me in, he said softly. We don't have much time. I hesitated, fear tangling with relief. But something about the urgency in his voice made me step aside. He slipped in quickly, closing the door behind him. What are you doing here? I asked, clutching the wooden box tighter. He looked me over, his eyes lingering on the bruises forming on my neck. His jaw tightened. David's been here. How do you know? I whispered. I saw him on my way into town, Samuel said, voice grim. Parked by the road looking like a caged wolf. When I stopped he sped off, nearly ran me into the ditch. That's when I knew something was wrong. I lowered myself into the chair, my body still trembling. He came for this. I lifted the box. He broke in, tried to choke the life out of me. Samuel's eyes darkened. I told Richard years ago that man was no good. And now Linda's dragged him into this. Tears stung my eyes. She didn't even come to the funeral, Samuel. But she came to demand her share. Both of them, like vultures. Samuel knelt beside me, his voice gentler now. Richard left that fortune for you, Maggie. And for the grandchildren. Don't let them take it. I wiped my eyes, anger replacing my fear. Then help me, Samuel. Help me protect it. Because David isn't giving up. He said he'll be back tomorrow. If I don't tell him where it is. My voice cracked. Samuel put a hand on my arm. Then we'll be ready for him. A flicker of hope sparked in my chest. For the first time since Richard's death, I didn't feel completely alone. But that hope didn't last long. A sudden sound outside made both of us freeze. Tires crunching against gravel. Headlights sweeping across the yard again. Another car. Samuel moved quickly to the window, his body tense. I joined him, peeking out from behind the curtain. My breath caught when I saw who it was. Linda. She stepped out of the car, her face twisted in anger, and slammed the door behind her. She stormed up the driveway, shouting before she even reached the porch. Mom. Open this door right now. You can't keep hiding from us. Samuel's eyes flicked to mine, his jaw tightening. She brought him back, didn't she? I swallowed hard. Yes. She must have. Her fists pounded on the door. I know you're in there. You can't ignore me forever. Then from the shadows another figure emerged, David. His smirk returned, cruel and certain. This time he wasn't alone. Two more men stepped out of the car, strangers with hard faces and cold eyes. My blood turned to ice. They've brought reinforcements, Samuel whispered. The pounding on the door grew louder. Linda's voice rising in fury. If you don't let us in, Mom, we'll break it down. Samuel grabbed my arm, his voice low but firm. We don't have much time. You have to decide now, do we fight or do we run? My chest heaved, torn between fear and defiance. Fight or flee. Stay or surrender. The door rattled violently as David's men threw their weight against it. The wood groaned under the strain. We had only seconds left. The door rattled harder under each blow. Wood splintered, hinges screamed. Linda's shrill voice pierced the night. Mom! Open this door or they'll smash it in. You're only making things worse for yourself. Beside me, Samuel's grip tightened on my arm. His face was grim, his jaw locked. Maggie, we have two choices. We fight them in here. Or we slip out the back and disappear into the night. My breath came in shallow gasps. My heart tore in two. This was my home. Richard's home. Every corner held memories. Our wedding photos on the walls, the quilt I stitched by hand, the rocking chair where I once held Linda as a baby. Could I abandon it to vultures? Could I watch them trample through the pieces of my life? But the pounding grew louder. The stranger's heavy fists joined David's, and the wood cracked under the pressure. I knew the door wouldn't last long. Tears welled in my eyes, but I wiped them quickly. We fight. Samuel's eyes narrowed with approval. Good. But we fight smart. He moved swiftly, scanning the room. You still keep tools in the basement? I nodded, my voice trembling. Yes, hammers, crowbars, even Richard's old hunting rifle. But it hasn't been fired in years. That'll do, Samuel muttered. Go grab it. I'll hold them off as long as I can. I hurried to the basement stairs, my heart thudding in my chest. Every creak of the floor felt like thunder. Behind me, the door frame groaned again, a warning that time was slipping away. In the basement, I fumbled through the shelves. My fingers found the cold steel of the rifle. Dust clung to it, the wood worn from age. I grabbed a box of shells, praying they weren't spoiled with time. When I returned upstairs, Samuel was braced against the door, His shoulder wedged into it as the men pushed from the other side. The wood cracked more with every shove. "Got it," he barked. I nodded, handing him the rifle. He checked it swiftly, loaded 2 shells, and cocked it with a snap that echoed through the room. The noise made the pounding stop. On the other side, David laughed, his voice dripping with mockery. "So that's how it is. The old woman wants to play soldier." Linda's voice followed, shrill and angry. "Mom, don't you dare. You're not going to point a gun at your own daughter." My hands shook, but I shouted back. "You stopped being my daughter the day you spat on your father's grave." The silence that followed was thick, charged. Then the pounding resumed, harder this time, as though rage had doubled their strength. The hinges bent. Splinters flew across the room. Samuel raised the rifle, his eyes calm but hard. "When they break through, stay behind me. If they rush, I'll fire." My knees trembled, but I steadied myself. "And if they don't stop?" He gave me a look that chilled me to my bones. "Then we end this tonight." The final blow came like thunder. The door burst inward, crashing against the floor. David strode in first, his smirk wide and venomous. Linda followed, her eyes wild with anger. Behind them, the 2 hired men filled the doorway, broad-shouldered and cold-eyed. The air was electric, thick with danger. Samuel leveled the rifle at them. "Not one step closer," he warned. David's smirk only widened. "You won't shoot. You're too soft. And she?" He jabbed a finger toward me. "She's too old. You don't have the stomach for it." Samuel's finger hovered on the trigger. His eyes never wavered. The men hesitated, uncertain. But Linda stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Mom, stop this nonsense. Give us the fortune and we'll leave you alone. Why make this harder than it needs to be?" I felt something inside me break. I looked at her, not as the woman standing there, greedy and cruel, but as the little girl she once was. The child who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The girl who once cried when her father scolded her for climbing too high in a tree. Where had she gone? "Linda," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Look at what you've become. Is this the life you want? Stealing from your own mother? Standing beside a man who would choke the breath out of me." For a flicker of a moment, doubt crossed her face. But it was gone as quickly as it came. She folded her arms, cold and unyielding. "I want what's mine." David stepped closer, his men behind him. "Enough talk. Hand it over." The air snapped with tension. Samuel's grip on the rifle tightened. My heart hammered in my chest. Then everything happened at once. One of the hired men lunged forward. Samuel fired. The gunshot exploded like thunder, shaking the walls. The man cried out, clutching his leg as he collapsed to the floor. Blood seeped through his pants. Linda screamed. David roared in rage. The second man rushed Samuel, knocking the rifle from his hands. It skidded across the floor out of reach. Chaos erupted. Samuel fought with his fists, grappling with the man, grunting as they crashed into the furniture. I grabbed the lamp's broken base and swung it with all my might, catching Linda across the arm. She cried out, stumbling back, shock flashing in her eyes. David lunged at me, his face twisted with fury. His hands reached for my throat again. But before he could grip me, Samuel shouted, "Maggie, run!" I froze, torn between fighting and fleeing. My eyes darted to the box still clutched in my hands. David's gaze followed mine. His lips curled into a snarl. "That's it. That's what I want." He lunged. I turned and bolted for the back door, clutching the box tight to my chest. My legs burned, my lungs screamed, but I didn't stop. Behind me, Samuel shouted, furniture crashed, and Linda's voice screeched like a banshee. I flung open the back door and stumbled into the cold night air. But as I sprinted across the yard, headlights blazed to life, blinding me. Another car was waiting. And from it, a new figure stepped out. Someone I never expected to see again. The headlights burned into my eyes, forcing me to shield my face with my hand. My legs quivered, frozen halfway across the yard. I clutched the box tight against my chest, my breath ragged. Then the car door creaked open. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. But as the figure stepped out into the glow of the moonlight, my jaw dropped. "Michael," I whispered. It was my eldest son. My Michael. The one who hadn't come to his father's funeral. The one who had called me once, only once, after Richard's death, his voice stiff and hurried before disappearing again. And now, here he was standing tall, his face shadowed by the glare of the headlights. "Mom," he said flatly, his voice carrying across the yard. Behind me, chaos still roared inside the house. Samuel grunting, David cursing, Linda shrieking. But the world around me narrowed to just that one word. "Mom, you," my voice cracked. "What are you doing here?" Michael's gaze flicked to the box in my arms. His lips tightened into a thin line. "I came for what belongs to me." The words hit me like a blade. My knees nearly buckled. "You two," I whispered, choking back tears. "After everything your father sacrificed for you? After all the nights I stayed awake praying you'd come home safe? You came here for money." He didn't answer right away. He stepped closer, his shoes crunching on the gravel. His eyes looked older, harder, like the boy I raised had been buried long ago. "I heard about the inheritance," he said finally. "I heard what Dad left behind. You can't expect me to just sit by while David takes everything." The box trembled in my grip. "Michael, this isn't the way. Your father's fortune wasn't meant to tear this family apart. It was meant to give us peace." But he didn't hear me. Or maybe he didn't care. He reached out a hand. "Give me the box, Mom. I'll handle David. I'll handle Linda." "But you have to give it to me." I staggered back a step, shaking my head. "No, not you, Michael. Not you too." The night split with another gunshot. I spun around. Smoke curled from the rifle Samuel had wrestled back into his grip. One of the hired men lay motionless on the floor of the house, and David bellowed with rage. Linda's scream rang through the night, raw and piercing. The noise jolted Michael forward. He seized my arm with a grip as strong as iron. His voice was low, urgent. "We don't have time. They'll kill Samuel. They'll come for you next. Hand it over, Mom." My chest heaved. For one fleeting moment I saw the boy he used to be. The boy who once ran to me with scraped knees crying out, "Mom, fix it." But that boy was gone. In his place stood a man whose hunger mirrored David's. "No," I said, my voice breaking but firm. "I won't let Richard's memory be sold to the highest bidder. I won't let greed turn this family into monsters." Michael's face twisted. His hand tightened on my wrist. "Then you leave me no choice." Before I could scream, he wrenched the box from my arms. I stumbled backward, falling hard into the damp grass. Pain shot up my spine, but I barely felt it. My eyes were locked on my son, my own flesh and blood, clutching the box like a prize. Inside the house, Samuel shouted my name. "Maggie, get out of there." But I couldn't move. My heart felt torn into 1,000 jagged pieces. Michael glanced over his shoulder toward the front door, where David was dragging Linda toward the porch, fury etched across his face. The two men locked eyes, each realizing the other had the same goal. And in that terrible moment I understood. They weren't going to fight me anymore. They were going to fight each other. The fortune had turned brother against brother. Michael tucked the box under his arm and sprinted toward his car. David roared and charged after him, shoving Linda aside as he bolted across the yard. "Michael!" I screamed, scrambling to my feet. "Don't do this." But he didn't stop. He flung open his car door, shoved the box onto the seat, and started the engine. David reached him just as the car roared to life. The two men grappled in the glare of the headlights, shouting, shoving, fists flying. And then with a sickening crunch the car lurched forward. The headlights swerved toward me. The blinding glare of the headlights swallowed me whole. My heart lurched into my throat as Michael's car hurtled forward, the tires spitting gravel into the night. "Mom!" Samuel's voice boomed behind me, desperate and sharp. I froze, my body refusing to move. For one terrible heartbeat, I thought this was how it would end, under the wheels of my own son's car. Then Samuel's arms wrapped around me, strong and unyielding. He pulled me sideways with all his strength. We hit the ground hard, rolling across the damp grass as the car roared past, missing us by mere inches. The rush of wind whipped through my hair, followed by the stench of burning rubber. The car screeched to a halt at the edge of the yard, just before slamming into the fence. Michael cursed, slamming his fists against the steering wheel. My chest heaved, my body trembling from head to toe. Samuel pulled me up, his voice urgent. Stay with me, Maggie. Don't shut down on me now. But I could barely breathe. My own son had tried to run me down, or had he? Was it an accident? A desperate struggle with David? My mind swirled with questions I wasn't ready to answer. David stumbled toward the car, his face twisted with rage. He yanked the driver's door open and dragged Michael out by the collar. You little thief! David roared, punching Michael hard across the face. Michael staggered back but didn't let go of the box. Blood trickled from his lip, but his eyes burned with defiance. It's mine! Michael shouted. Dad meant it for me, not for you. David lunged again, and the two men crashed to the ground, fists flying, grunting like wild animals. The box clattered across the yard, skidding into the dirt. For a split second it was free, unclaimed. I bolted toward it, my legs shaky but determined. But before I could reach it, Linda appeared, her face streaked with tears and fury. She snatched the box up and hugged it to her chest like a starving child clutching bread. Stop! She screamed, her voice raw. It's mine. I deserve it after everything you've all put me through. My heart shattered. All three of my children, every piece of my blood, had been poisoned by the same greed. The fortune that was supposed to give us peace had become a curse. Linda, I pleaded, my voice breaking. Listen to yourself. You're fighting over money while your father lies cold in the ground. Is this how you honor him? She turned on me, her eyes wild. Don't you dare lecture me, Mom. You think you were the saint? You kept secrets from us. You knew about the fortune all along, and you didn't say a word. Her words struck like knives. I staggered back, my mouth opening but no sound coming. She wasn't entirely wrong. I had hidden it. But I had done it to protect them, not to feed this madness. Samuel stepped forward, his voice booming like thunder. Enough! This is tearing her apart. Can't you see? You're destroying your own mother. But they didn't listen. Michael shoved David off him, wiping blood from his mouth. Give it to me, Linda, he shouted, lunging for the box. No. Linda screamed, clutching it tighter. David tackled them both, and the three collapsed into a heap on the ground, thrashing, pulling, cursing. The box slipped free, tumbling across the dirt again. This time Samuel darted forward, scooping it up. His chest heaved, his hands gripping it tight. Enough, he thundered. This ends now. The yard fell silent for a heartbeat, all eyes fixed on him. Then Michael rose to his feet, his face a mask of rage. That doesn't belong to you, Samuel. You're not even family. David's voice dripped venom. Hand it over, old man, or I'll put you in the ground next to Richard. Even Linda, her face streaked with dirt and tears, whispered, Give it to me, Samuel, please. I staggered toward Samuel, my voice trembling. Don't let them win. Don't let this house, this family, turn into ashes. He looked at me, his eyes softening for just a moment. Then he took a step back. No, he said firmly. If they want it, they'll have to go through me first. The tension snapped like a whip. Michael lunged. David followed. Linda shrieked, clawing forward. Samuel turned and shoved the box into my hands. Run, Maggie, he roared. Run and don't look back. But before I could move, the night split with a deafening crack. A gunshot. Everyone froze. The smell of gunpowder filled the air. My ears rang. My hands went numb. Samuel staggered backward, his face stunned. Blood blossomed across his shirt, dark and spreading. The box slipped from my grip and hit the ground with a dull thud. Samuel! I screamed, my voice raw. I lunged forward, catching him as his knees buckled. His weight collapsed into my arms, heavy and warm. His eyes fluttered, his lips moving faintly. Don't let them have it. Then his head slumped against my shoulder. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I lifted my gaze, trembling, desperate to see who had fired. And there, standing at the edge of the porch, gripping the smoking rifle, was Linda. Her face was pale, her hands shaking, her eyes wide with shock. I didn't mean to, she whispered, the rifle slipping from her grasp. I just wanted the box. The yard erupted into chaos again. Michael shouting, David rushing forward, Linda collapsing into sobs. But I could only kneel there in the dirt. Samuel's lifeless body in my arms, my heart breaking in silence. The man who had protected me, The friend who had stood by me. Gone in an instant. And my own daughter had pulled the trigger. I cradled Samuel's body in my arms, rocking back and forth like a mother soothing her child. Hot tears streamed down my face, falling onto his shirt where the blood spread like wildfire. My chest heaved with sobs, raw and broken. Samuel, no, please no. Linda's rifle slipped from her hands and clattered onto the porch. She fell to her knees, clutching her face, her cries sharp and hysterical. I didn't mean it. Mom, I didn't mean it. I just wanted the box. I swear I didn't mean to shoot him. Her words cut through me like shards of glass. My daughter, my own blood, had just taken the life of the only man who had stood by me when the rest turned against me. Michael's face twisted with disgust. Pathetic, he spat at her. You can't even handle a gun without making a mess. He stepped closer, his eyes locking on the box at my feet. David shoved him aside, snarling. Stay out of this, Michael. That box is mine. The two men squared off again, fists clenched, their rage vibrating in the night air. Linda's sobs rose higher, frantic and desperate. And I, kneeling in the dirt, Samuel's lifeless head resting against me, felt something inside me snap. Grief hardened into fury. My tears dried on my cheeks, leaving salt in their wake. I lifted my head slowly, my gaze falling on the rifle lying just a few feet away. The weapon Linda had dropped. The weapon still warm from Samuel's blood. The men didn't see it. They were too busy snarling at each other like dogs fighting over scraps. My fingers twitched. My breath slowed. I gently laid Samuel's head down on the grass and rose to my knees. My hand stretched toward the rifle, inch by inch. But just as my fingers brushed the wooden stock, a heavy boot slammed down on it. I looked up, my blood running cold. David stood over me, his smirk cruel, his eyes glinting with triumph. Nice try, Margaret, he growled, pressing the rifle away with his boot. But this ends on my terms. David's boot pressed down hard on the rifle, pinning it to the ground. His smirk widened, cruel and satisfied. Well, Margaret, he sneered, leaning closer. Looks like you've run out of options. I stayed frozen on my knees beside Samuel's lifeless body, my breath shallow, my mind racing. The night smelled of smoke and gunpowder, of blood and sweat and betrayal. Michael spat to the side, his jaw clenched tight. Don't get ahead of yourself, David. You think you've won just because you've got a gun under your foot. David barked a laugh, low and ugly. A gun makes all the difference, little brother. Ask Samuel. Linda whimpered from the porch, her face streaked with tears. Stop, please stop. Haven't we done enough? She rocked back and forth, clutching her knees, her eyes hollow with shock. But neither man heard her. Or if they did, they didn't care. I clenched my fists against the grass, my body trembling. My Samuel was dead. My family had turned into vultures, clawing at each other for scraps of money. And here I was, kneeling in the dirt like prey, while David lorded over me with that twisted grin. But grief has a way of hardening into something else. I raised my head slowly, forcing my voice steady. David, listen to yourself. Do you think Richard would have wanted this? His own family tearing each other apart like wild dogs. His smirk faltered for just a moment. Then he leaned closer, his breath hot and foul. Richard's dead, Margaret. And the only thing he left behind worth having is that fortune. Stop pretending you're the keeper of his wishes. You're just an old woman with a box of money. Michael stepped forward, his voice sharp. That money belongs to me. If you think I'll let you take it, you're dumber than you look. David whipped his head toward him, eyes blazing. Say that again. Michael didn't flinch. It's mine. Dad would have wanted me to have it. Not you. Not her. He jabbed a finger toward Linda, who shrank back further. And definitely not Mom, who's been hiding it from us all along. The words stung, but I stayed silent. Michael's bitterness was a wound I couldn't heal tonight. David shoved Michael hard in the chest. You want it? Try to take it from me. Michael lunged. The two brothers crashed into each other, fists flying, grunts filling the air. They rolled across the dirt, kicking up dust, their rage boiling over. I seized the moment. While they were locked in their brawl, I darted forward, my hands flying to the rifle. My fingers wrapped around the stock, pulling hard against David's boot. He noticed too late. With a desperate yank, I freed the weapon and scrambled backward, clutching it tight against my chest. Stop! I shouted, my voice louder than I ever thought it could be. The men froze, panting, their clothes torn, their faces bloodied. Linda stared from the porch, her eyes wide and hollow. I rose to my feet, the rifle shaking in my hands. I'd never aimed a gun at anyone in my life, but tonight everything had changed. My hands were steady, fueled not by hate, but by something stronger, determination. This ends now, I said, my voice trembling but firm. I won't let you destroy what's left of this family. If it means protecting Richard's memory, even if it means protecting myself, I will pull this trigger. For the first time, silence fell across the yard. The night air was thick, heavy, waiting. Michael straightened, his lip bleeding, his chest heaving. He stared at me, his eyes full of disbelief. Mom, you wouldn't. David chuckled, though his smirk wavered. She doesn't have it in her. She's bluffing. I tightened my grip, lifting the barrel until it pointed squarely at his chest. Try me. His grin vanished. Linda's sobs broke through the silence. Mom, please don't shoot anyone else. Her voice cracked, her hands clutching her hair as if she could tear the madness out of herself. Michael glanced at the box lying in the grass, his eyes flicking between me and it. I could see the hunger burning in him, eating away at whatever shred of decency remained. David shifted one step closer, slow and careful, his hands raised. Margaret, you don't want blood on your hands. You've already lost Samuel. Don't make yourself a murderer too. I took a step back, the barrel never wavering. My voice came out hoarse low. Don't call me Margaret. You lost that right when you stood on my porch and spat on Richard's grave. His eyes narrowed. His smirk was gone now, replaced with something colder. Calculating. Dangerous. And then, before I could react, Michael made his move. He dove for the box, snatching it up from the dirt. Michael, no. I screamed, swinging the rifle toward him. David lunged at the same time, trying to rip the box from his brother's hands. The two collided with bone-crunching force, each gripping the box like it was their last breath. The rifle trembled in my arms. My finger brushed the trigger. One wrong move and the whole yard could explode in blood again. Linda staggered to her feet, screaming through her tears. Stop it. All of you. Just stop. But they didn't stop. Michael shoved David backward. David clawed at the box, ripping it open in the struggle. Papers flew into the night, scattering across the yard like frightened birds. And there, inside the torn box, I saw it for the first time. Not stacks of money. Not gold. Documents. Deeds. Bank certificates. Hidden accounts. Proof of the fortune Richard had hidden all along. David froze. Michael froze. Linda's sobs turned into a gasp. And in that heartbeat of stunned silence, a shadow moved at the edge of the yard. Another figure stepped out from the darkness. Not one of my children. Not Samuel. Someone else. Someone I never thought I'd see again. And in their hand was another gun. The night froze. All of us, David, Michael, Linda, and even me with the rifle in my trembling hands, turned toward the shadow stepping out from the tree line. The moonlight caught his face and my knees nearly gave out. Richard. I whispered, my voice cracking. It couldn't be. My husband. My Richard. The man we had buried. The man whose funeral my children had refused to attend. And yet there he stood, alive, his eyes hard and hollow, his hands gripping a pistol like he had been carrying it all his life. Linda screamed, clutching her chest. Dad! Michael staggered backward, his face pale as a ghost. No, this isn't possible. You're dead. David's jaw dropped, his voice strangled. We buried you. I saw the coffin lowered into the ground. Richard's gaze swept over us all, cold and unyielding. You buried an empty box. I made sure of it. The world tilted beneath me. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out the crickets in the night wind. He was alive. My husband alive. And yet he wasn't the same. His face was leaner, sharper. His eyes carried no warmth, only steel. You? I gasped, my chest aching. Why? Why would you let me mourn you? Why would you let your children believe you were dead? His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Because it was the only way to protect the fortune. to see which of you deserved it. The silence was suffocating. Michael finally found his voice, his tone shaking with rage. You mean you faked your death? You watched us tear ourselves apart like this? Richard raised the pistol, aiming it at him. And I've seen enough. You've shown me your greed, your weakness. None of you are worthy. Linda dropped to her knees, sobbing. David clenched his fists, fury boiling in his eyes. I could barely breathe. The man I thought I knew, the man I loved, had orchestrated this nightmare. Richard's gaze snapped to me. And you, Margaret, you were supposed to keep the secret safe. Instead, you let it unravel. My stomach twisted. His pistol shifted, the barrel now pointing directly at me. Maybe, he said coldly. It's better if I start over, with no one left standing. The sound of the hammer cocking echoed in the night. The hammer clicked, sharp as thunder in the silence. My heart lurched into my throat. Richard's pistol was steady, his eyes locked on me. This was no bluff. The man I once loved, the man I thought I buried, was about to kill me with his own hand. Richard! I cried, my voice breaking. Think of what you're doing. But his eyes didn't soften. They stayed like stone, cold and merciless. Linda crawled forward on her knees, her sobs echoing in the night. Dad, please. Don't hurt Mom. If you have to blame someone, blame us. Blame me. But don't kill her. Richard didn't look at her. His finger tightened against the trigger. Then suddenly Michael moved. With a roar, he lunged at Richard, tackling him from the side. The gun went off, bang. The shot shattering the night, the bullet whizzing past my ear so close I felt the heat of it. I screamed, clutching the rifle to my chest. Linda collapsed flat on the porch, shrieking. Richard and Michael wrestled in the dirt, grunting, fists flying. The pistol slid from Richard's hand, skidding across the grass. David dove for it. No. I screamed, aiming the rifle. My finger hovered on the trigger, torn between saving one child and condemning another. David's hand closed around the pistol. He spun, pointing it at Richard and Michael locked together in the dirt. Get off him, Michael, or I'll shoot. Michael snarled, his hands around Richard's throat. Do it. Shoot him. He doesn't deserve to live after what he's done. Richard wheezed, his face red, his eyes bulging. You ungrateful boy. Linda crawled to me, clutching my skirt, her body shaking. Mom, do something. Stop them before one of them dies. But what could I do? I had a rifle in my hands, my eldest son had a pistol, and my husband, who wasn't supposed to be alive, was being strangled by his own child. The world had tipped off its axis. Drop it, David. I shouted, the rifle aimed squarely at him. He froze, his finger on the trigger. His chest heaved, his face wild with rage and fear. No, Mom. Not this time. I've lived in Michael's shadow my whole life. I've been second best to him, to you, even to Dad. But tonight, I get what I deserve. I take control. I take the fortune. And I'll put anyone down who gets in my way. His words ripped through me. You'd shoot your own brother? His eyes didn't blink. If it means survival, yes. The pistol shook in his grip, his finger twitching. I had no choice. I raised the rifle higher, my voice shaking but loud enough to cut through the madness. Then I'll shoot you, David. Put it down now. The night stilled. For a heartbeat, none of us moved. Michael's hands tightened around Richard's throat. Richard clawed at him, choking. David's pistol pointed back and forth between them and me. Linda sobbed into the dirt. And then, Richard's hand darted out. He grabbed a rock from the ground and smashed it against Michael's temple. Michael cried out, his body slumping to the side. Richard scrambled free, gasping for breath. He snatched the pistol from David's hands in one swift motion. Now he held the weapon again. And this time his aim was steady. First at Michael, who lay dazed and bleeding. Then at David, who stumbled backward in shock. Then at Linda, cowering by the porch. And finally, at me. You think you can defy me? Richard's voice was a low growl, shaking with rage. You think you can take what's mine? You're nothing without me, all of you. Richard, please. I begged, tears streaming down my face. This isn't you. You're not the man I loved. His lips twisted. That man is dead. This is who I've always been. The pistol didn't waver. I lifted the rifle, pointing it at his chest. My hands trembled, but my aim was true. For a long, unbearable moment, we stood there, husband and wife, rifles and pistols locked, both of us shaking with fury and grief. The children were silent now, all three staring at us in horror. Finally Richard spoke, his voice cold as death. "You have one chance, Margaret. Hand over the rifle. Kneel. And maybe I'll let you live." My chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. I thought of Samuel's lifeless body, of Linda's broken sobs, of Michael and David consumed by greed and hate, of the decades I had given this man, only to be repaid with lies, betrayal, and cruelty. And then in a voice steadier than I felt, I said, "No." Richard's eyes narrowed. His finger tightened on the trigger. And just as the night was about to shatter again, a voice rang out from the darkness behind him. "Drop the gun, Richard. Or I swear, I'll put you in the ground this time for real." Richard froze. His eyes widened, fury flashing in them as he turned toward the voice. I turned too, and what I saw made my heart slam against my ribs. It wasn't the police. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone we all knew. Someone who was supposed to be gone. And they were holding a shotgun aimed straight at Richard's head. The shotgun gleamed in the moonlight, its barrel steady, its voice deadly. "Drop it, Richard. Now." Richard's jaw tightened, his pistol still aimed at me. Slowly he turned toward the voice, his face hard as stone. And when the figure stepped fully into the light, my heart nearly stopped. "Samuel," I gasped. It was him. My Samuel. The man who had fallen to the ground hours earlier, lifeless in my arms. His shirt was blood-stained, his temple bruised, but his eyes, sharp and alive, were locked on Richard with a fury I had never seen before. Michael staggered upright, clutching his head. No, this isn't real. He's dead. He wasn't breathing." David's mouth fell open, his face pale. "What kind of nightmare is this?" Linda let out a sob of relief, her trembling hands covering her mouth. "Samuel. Oh God, Samuel." But Samuel didn't look at any of them. His focus was fixed squarely on Richard. "You took everything from me," Samuel growled, his voice low and shaking with rage. "You made me believe in your lies, your fortune, your games. And then you tried to erase me." Richard sneered. "You should have stayed down. It would have saved you the pain." Samuel's hands didn't waver. "I may have fallen once, Richard. But this time, I'm not the one going into the ground." The two men stared at each other, steel against steel. I clutched the rifle tighter, my breath ragged. I had thought I'd lost Samuel forever. Seeing him alive was like seeing a ghost, a miracle wrapped in blood and fury. But the danger was far from over. Richard smirked, his pistol flicking between me and Samuel. "So it's 2 against 1 now? You think that changes anything?" "Drop the gun," Samuel repeated, his finger poised on the trigger. "Or I'll end this myself." The air was thick with silence, everyone waiting, no one daring to breathe. And then Richard laughed. A low, bitter laugh that sent chills down my spine. "Fine," he said. "If I'm going down, I'm not going alone." His pistol snapped sideways, aimed directly at Linda. "No," I screamed, jerking the rifle up. Samuel fired. The blast roared through the night, deafening and final. Richard staggered, his body jerking backward, his pistol falling from his hand. He collapsed into the dirt, smoke curling in the air. The yard went silent. Linda screamed. Michael froze. David covered his mouth. And I, my heart hammering, stared at Samuel, who still held the smoking shotgun, his chest rising and falling like a man who had carried death in his hands. But Richard wasn't finished. With blood bubbling at his lips, he dragged himself up on one elbow. His eyes, burning with hate, locked on me. "This isn't over," he rasped. His hand groped blindly toward the dirt. And that's when I saw it. Another gun. Half buried in the grass, inches from his fingertips. Richard's fingers scraped the dirt, inching closer to the black metal of the hidden gun. His breath came in ragged gasps, blood bubbling at the corners of his mouth. But his eyes, cold, sharp, furious, were locked on me. "This isn't over," he rasped. "Stop him." I screamed, my voice raw. Samuel swung the shotgun up again. But Richard's hand was already curling around the grip of the pistol. The yard erupted in chaos. Michael lunged forward, trying to kick the gun away. David darted back, fear etched across his face. Linda covered her ears and wailed. "Richard, let it go!" Samuel barked, his voice trembling with rage. "It's done. It's over." But Richard didn't stop. He coughed, spat blood into the grass, and raised the pistol with a shaking hand. His arm was weak, but his determination was iron. And it was aimed at me. I lifted the rifle, my arms trembling, tears blurring my vision. I had never wanted this. I had never wanted guns or death or blood on my hands. But here I was, staring down the barrel of my husband's gun. The man who had once held my heart in his hands, now ready to take my life. Time slowed. I saw Linda on the porch, her lips moving in prayer. I saw Michael frozen, torn between rage and fear. I saw David's fists clenched, his body coiled like a cornered animal. I saw Samuel, my Samuel, the son who refused to die, standing firm with his shotgun aimed at the man who had betrayed us all. And then I heard Richard's voice, soft but clear. "You were mine, Margaret. Everything was mine." The pistol cracked. I flinched. But the bullet didn't hit me. It struck the ground inches from my foot, dirt exploding upward. Richard's arm sagged. His body collapsed sideways into the grass. His chest rose and fell once, twice. Then it stopped. The pistol slipped from his grip. The night went quiet. No more gunfire. No more shouting. Only the ragged breaths of my children, the pounding of my own heart, and the distant chorus of crickets reclaiming the night. I lowered the rifle slowly, my whole body trembling. My knees buckled and I sank into the dirt, staring at the man I once loved. Richard was gone. For real this time. "Mom!" Samuel's voice broke through the silence. He lowered the shotgun, his hands shaking, his eyes filled with sorrow. "It's over." I nodded weakly, but the tears came anyway, streaming down my face. Over? How could anything ever be over after this? Linda stumbled to me, clutching my shoulders, sobbing. "Is he really gone?" I pulled her close, pressing her against me. "Yes, baby. He's gone." Michael stood stiff, his face unreadable, his hands balled into fists. "He deserved worse," David muttered under his breath, his eyes darting to the torn open box and the scattered documents. Even now, even in the wake of all this blood, I saw the hunger flicker in his eyes. I wiped my tears and rose to my feet, my voice trembling but steady. "No. Enough. There is no fortune worth this. Not $1, not one deed, not one account. Look at what it's cost us." I pointed to the ground where Richard lay, lifeless. "Greed destroyed him. And if you let it, it will destroy you too." Linda sobbed harder, burying her face in my chest. Michael said nothing, but I saw his jaw clench and unclench, shame mixing with his anger. David looked away, unable to meet my eyes. Samuel stepped forward, his shotgun still heavy in his hands. "Mom's right. Dad didn't just fake his death. He killed himself long before tonight. Piece by piece, with every lie, every secret, every ounce of greed. If we keep chasing what he left behind, we're no better than him." The silence that followed was thick, but it was different now. Not the silence of fear. The silence of realization. I bent down, my hands brushing over the scattered papers. Deeds. Certificates. Bank accounts. All the proof of the hidden fortune. I gathered them into my lap, then walked slowly to the fire pit at the edge of the yard. "Mom, what are you doing?" Michael asked, his voice sharp. I didn't answer. I just dropped the papers into the flames. The fire roared, greed and blood turning to ash before our eyes. "David's chautit." "No. That was ours." He lunged forward, but Samuel caught him by the arm and yanked him back. "It's gone, David." Samuel barked. "It's over. Let it go before it eats you alive." I watched the flames devour the fortune, my heart heavy but certain. Richard's test, his curse, ended here. With me. We stood there for what felt like hours, the fire crackling, the night slowly swallowing the madness that had consumed us. When the last page curled into ash, I turned back to my children. "Listen to me," I said softly, my voice cracking. "We've lost enough. If we keep fighting each other, there will be nothing left. Not love, not family, not even memory. Your father's greed is gone with him. We are all that's left. We either heal, or we end up buried next to him. Linda nodded through her tears. Samuel's face softened, though sorrow still weighed on him. Michael looked away, silent, but I saw the battle raging in his eyes. And David, his lips pressed tight, his eyes full of anger, turned his back and walked toward the darkness. David! I called, but he didn't stop. He disappeared into the trees, swallowed by the night. I wanted to go after him, but my body was too weak, my heart too broken. I only prayed the lesson would reach him someday. The rest of us went inside the house, the weight of the night pressing heavy on our shoulders. We were bruised, bleeding, broken, but alive. As I lay down that night, the echoes of gunshots still ringing in my ears, I thought about everything we had lost. My husband, my son in some ways, my peace, my trust. But I also thought about the lesson Richard had unknowingly left behind. Greed destroys. Secrets rot. And family, when poisoned by betrayal, can crumble faster than any empire. I closed my eyes, whispering a prayer for strength. Not riches, not fortune, just strength to guide my children away from the path their father had walked. Because if this story has taught you anything, let it be this. No amount of money is worth your soul. And no hidden fortune can replace the love of a family united. Thank you for staying with me through this long, painful story. My name is Margaret. I am 68 years old, speaking to you from Georgia, USA. If you've been touched, shocked, or even learned something from my story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and click the notification button for more upcoming stories like this one. And before you leave, tell me, where are you watching from? I truly want to know. Because stories like this don't just belong to me. They belong to all of us. And with that, my story ends.